I am so excited to share my latest resource, downloadable print your own flashcard decks. These have been created following my many years working with children of all abilities in the clinical setting, and my themed flashcard decks work. The kids love them because they're engaging and they encourage movement, learning, coping skills, and just plain fun. From dinosaurs to Halloween, each deck includes suggested and themed centering techniques, warm-ups, guided meditation, relaxation, yoga-based movement, and games. Each card in the deck includes multiple yoga-based practices to choose from, meaning you can enjoy a different experience each time you play, and there will always be something that's suitable and accessible for the child you are working with or the setting you are working in. These are highly adaptable tools, and they work in the classroom, hospital, office, or home setting. Download and print on card or paper stock of your choice and enjoy creative, adaptable, and accessible adventures for many years to come with children of all abilities and in all settings. I promise you will not regret adding a set of 2 of these to your resource collection. And keep checking in. I have created a lot of these decks over the many years I worked in the clinical setting with children of all abilities, and I'm slowly updating and releasing them to the public so that all children can benefit from these wonderful tools.
Hi, I'm Lisa Roberts from Yo-Yo Yoga School, introducing movement, meditation, and mindfulness, a training program for pediatric professionals, educators, and parents. Today, we'll be going into session 26, which is covering restorative-based stretches for children that fall under the categories of hip stabilizers and twists. So before we go into hip stabilizers and twists, just a quick review of the benefits of restorative stretching for children, being mindful that this doesn't apply to only children, but anybody who practices, from children to adults. The benefits of restorative stretching is the same. Therapeutic and relaxing. They are calming and centering for both the mind and the body. We use body position, gravity, and props to fully support the body in a passive style of stretch. So you're still reaping the benefits of the stretch, but it's completely effortless, allowing the body to completely surrender and relax. So that actually helps to melt away and relieve any physical tension. It also creates a lot of space in the body to encourage slow, deep breathing, all while being fully supportive and just completely surrendering the mind and the body. So this all culminates to being fully relaxing, fully supportive. It helps to balance the autonomic nervous system. So the autonomic nervous system, as you recall from previous webinars, is like a teeter-totter or a seesaw. And sometimes we'll have our fight or flight or our sympathetic nervous system activated when we're stressed, when we're anxious, when we're worried, when we're busy. And at the other end of the scale is our parasympathetic nervous system. And we can activate that by taking control of our body and our mind, by activating some restorative poses to release physical tension and removing any physical tension in our body, by encouraging slow and deep breathing, by lowering our heart rate, by lowering our temperature, lowering our blood pressure, lowering the release of cortisols, which is a hormone that's released along with adrenaline, and that's activated when our fight or flight is activated. So this all culminates into a very therapeutic, deeply relaxing practice that has many, many health benefits for those who practice. It encourages deep relaxation, and that can also affect our quality of sleep and rest. I use restorative style stretching in the clinical setting to help patients to really let go, rest, and relax, and find some quality rest to help them heal. And this is also a practice that could be accessed at bedtime before going to bed, just to help the body release any tension, fully relax and drift off to sleep. So some enhancements I recommend to really create a nice, nurturing, nourishing, safe and secure session are to dim the lights and draw the shades to make it dark, make it cozy, not too dark if children are afraid of the dark. So you want to be able to have that lines of communication open and know what's truly comfortable and beneficial for the individual you're working with. A do not disturb sign is helpful on the door, just to really have your own private space and know that there's not going to be an interruption or disruption. Music can help enhance the experience. For some people, music can be a distraction. So again, it's communication. Some children I work with prefer no music. So we'll just focus on the breath, and the rhythm of the breath can be kind of the soothing, relaxing music. But if you want to bring music in, no lyrics, because that can also be distracting. I recommend instrumental, nature sounds. If you have a teen who likes pop, you can find some instrumental mellow covers of pop songs. And so that way you're feeding into what they like, but also feeding into that something that's going to encourage relaxation and not distract from it. Using eye pillows, that can just, the gentle pressure of the pillow against the eyes can just help send the message to the brain via the nervous system, hey, it's time to calm down, it's time to relax. It can also eliminate additional distractions and help to turn the attention inward rather than outside of oneself, and just to help to bring everything down to center and feel grounded and calm and relaxed. An extra blanket is helpful, and socks on the feet, cozy sweaters. Just you want to encourage deep relaxation, but then once the person relaxes, you want them to stay relaxed and not be distracted because they're suddenly cold because their body temperature has dropped. So having these things on hand or having them placed on the person before beginning can be very, very helpful and eliminate distractions and just help to really nurture the individual in the practice so they feel really safe, really cozy, really warm, and able to relax. Aromatherapy is another modality you can bring into the session. Always be mindful. Some people are very sensitive to smells, so ask permission first. Do your research. If there's a certain oil or scent you're bringing into the session, check that if there are any contraindications, and confirm that this is safe for the individual you're working with before using this or introducing it into the session. And of course, restorative style stretching goes hand in hand with breathing techniques, progressive relaxation techniques, guided imagery, and storytelling. In fact, these are the core elements you will be incorporating to engage children in this practice. Some kids are challenged by being still. Some kids still developmentally just would be challenged by being still just because of their age. And some, even adults can be uncomfortable being still for extended periods. For restorative stretches to truly work and for the individual to reap benefits, they do need to be held for typically a longer length of time than you would a regular stretching session or a movement session. I recommend for kids under 12, 1 to 3 minutes, obviously starting at a lower length of time and building on it incrementally as they feel comfortable. So 1 to 3 minutes for under 12-year-olds, 3 to 5 for 12 to 16, 17-year-olds, and then 17, 18 plus, we're talking about young adults. That's more of an adult practice, and adults typically hold these postures for 5 to 10 minutes to truly get the benefits. That can be lengthy, even the 1 to 3 minutes can be lengthy for a young child. So this is where the creative storytelling, guided imagery, for little kids, sometimes if a guided story doesn't work for them and they, they're a little bit chatty or, a little bit, have a lot of extra energy bouncing around, ricocheting around, then for younger kids, I might just whisper and ask lots of questions. For example, if we've created a firefly, we're calling the posture a stretch, we've got them set up in firefly. I'll ask, what color is your light? And where is your firefly? And what is it like to fly? And what does it look like there? And asking open questions that can elicit a response. And I always whisper so that they whisper back. So that encourages that sense of relaxation, but they're actively engaged in this creative, imaginative story that we're making together. and through that experience of relax, they've held the posture for the time that benefits them without just being told just to sit there and be perfectly still. So these are creative ways to support the child in the stretch, but by tapping into their imaginations and engaging them that way. So hip stabilizers, you'll commonly hear these referred to as hip openers in traditional yoga. And you can see what I just did with my arms. The hips don't only move this way, which is why I don't like that term hip openers. I like to call it hip stabilizers. When we think of the hips, they have a huge range of motion. The hips are quite mobile when you think of our joints. So they can flex, they can extend, they can rotate, they can abduct, they can adduct. And that's a lot of movement. So when you think of all of that mobility, you want to not only think of mobility, but you would like your hips to move all of those ways with control and with stability. So that's what hip strengtheners, hip stabilizers do. They support stability and mobility of hip joints. They gently stretch the hips and the low back. They also affect the abdominals. So for wellness or support, when we think of that, that's really supportive for low back and hip pain. Hip stabilizers can be helpful for that. When we think of what lives between our hips and in this area, we have our digestive system, we have our reproductive system. So hip stabilizers can also positively impact and support healthy digestion. They can provide symptomatic relief from nausea, diarrhea, gas, constipation. They can also be helpful for menstrual cramp relief. So let's look at some restorative hip stabilizers. Firefly, or supported bound angle. So you can see here we have our little character in supported bound angle, and she's supported by some blocks. Don't have to use blocks. We've got traditional yoga props today, but instead of blocks, you may use books, you may use folded cushions, you could use folded towels, you could use little hand towels rolled up, and that's something to be very mindful with. Today, I'm going to use blocks because for my body, blocks move. But if you were working with a small child, a traditional yoga block would just be way too big. So that's why just seeing who you're working with, how their body works, what size their body is, and what kind of support they need, you've got to think outside of the box and find alternative props. So just having a selection handy and just getting to know the kids you work with and the populations you work with, you'll begin to start thinking outside of the box and just be able to support them fully and safely to enable them to benefit from this practice. So again, I can't stress highly enough. And even when I use a chair, and we've talked about this in previous webinars, and I will always press it, a chair it has to be designed for the size of the person you're working with for it to be an effective prop. And that's the same with all of these props. So as we're working through this series, I will always point out alternatives and recommend alternatives as we work with props. So supported bound angle, we're propped and supported under the legs as we sit in this butterfly or mound angle pose. It's a gentle stretch for the hip and low back, the inner thighs and the groins. And this also, the way we sit, position and support the pelvis when we're propped this way and sitting this way is very supportive for postural alignment. So for this particular stretch, if I was doing a session of restorative stretching, I would do a gentle warm up at the start of the session and then go into a series of restorative stretches. If I was accessing these postures individually to target a specific therapeutic need, then I would do a little gentle warm up and counter stretch for the particular posture I'm working with, which is why I'm showing it this way. But being mindful that if you were doing a complete session, just a gentle warm-up at the beginning, and you could use any of the warm-ups I've demonstrated in previous webinars, or you can use a collection of the ones that you're going to learn by watching in this series, the individual warm-ups, you could put those together. So just from watching me do each individual one, you could piece together a gentle warm-up using the suggested ones for each individual posture. So that was just a little explanation that if you're doing an extended session with multiple poses, you don't have to warm up at each particular pose. However, that is what I will be demonstrating today. So for this one, I would do hip circles for the warm up. I've called it firefly, so firefly belly breathing for the breath or mindfulness, or you could do elevated breathing as well. And then the counter stretch is tiny seeds. So we will demonstrate. I'm just going to flip the camera, and I'm beginning in bound angle. So that's my feet touching, knees out, and my hips pressing down into the floor. So for the warm up, I'm going to grab onto my feet and I'm going to do some hip circles. And these can be as slow or as fast, as big or as small as feels good to the individual practicing. And you notice I switch directions, and now I'm ready to go into my supported down angle or my firefly pose. So I'm just placing a block under my calves and my thighs. So my legs are still pressing down in that direction, but they're fully supported as I do so. And I can hold onto the feet and pull on the feet to sit up nice and tall. Or you can just rest the hands on the belly, relaxing the shoulders, relaxing the elbows, and guide the breathing technique. So in this case, I mentioned firefly belly, and that's where we imagine as the belly expands, a beautiful bright light of a firefly lighting up, and on the exhale as the belly relaxes, that light softly fading. So easy inhales, bright light, relaxing exhales, it fails, my goodness, fades. So I'm closing my eyes here and just feeling my belly expand on the inhale, imagining that bright light, and feeling it soften on the exhale. Now again, doesn't have to be blocks, it could be folded cushions, rolled up blankets, whatever works so that the individual is fully supported and can relax as they hold this posture. So to come out of this, we remove the supports, bring the knees up, and come into seated child's pose. This is basically child's pose, but it's acted sitting on the bum. Okay, let's see what our next posture is, what our next hip stabilizer. Sleeping bug, this is a favorite of mine. So this is bound reclined child's pose. It's basically child's pose on the back. Child's pose is also a forward bend. So we're stretching the back side of the body, compressing the front as we do in forward bends. And this also applies a gentle pressure to the back side of the body and a gentle compression to the front. So we've got that sensory input on the back as well, which is very grounding and supportive. We're getting pressure and support on the back side of the body as it's pressing into the mat, and then the gentle compression on the front side of the body. So it's, you're thinking of that pressure, it's almost like a hug and very, very supportive. And this also relieves low tension in the low back and the hip area. So to warm up, I would do rock and roll and whale tail. Because we're bringing all this awareness into the back, and you've got that resistance of the floor pressing into the back, to introduce back breathing, to really be aware of that expansion of the back on the inhale and relaxation of the back on the exhale. This is a nice opportunity to introduce back breathing. And then a counter stretch, tug of war. So we will flip greens again so you can get a full view. So we need a strap for this one. So the strap, I've already got a loop in the strap, and I'm placing it over my head. So it's just around my waist, and then the loop is to the side. Coming onto the back, we can do some rock and rolls to warm up and massage the back of the spine. So you could do like 3 to 5. I'm just going to do 3 today. And then whale tail. So knees are bent, and we can just gently swish from side to side. Like a whale tail. So my legs look like a tail of a whale as I gently swish from side to side. Could also be a mermaid or a merman. What's my motto? You're only limited by your imagination. So I've hugged my knees in, and I've placed that strap, which was around my waist. It's still around my waist, and I slid it over my knees, so it's over at the top of my shins. And then I have the strap part, the buckle part, where it's nice and accessible. So I'm in control, and I can make it as tight or as loose as I want. And so that's holding my knees in place close to my body in this reclined child's pose shape. So I can just rest my arms out to the side and rest and relax in this reclined child. Now a strap may be too restrictive for a child. It may be a little terrifying to be strapped in, particularly if they're a little claustrophobic. So another option would be for you as the teacher to gently press down and hold their legs here as they relax in this reclined child's pose. And then a counter stretch, we could do a full body stretch, whale tail, or once you release, tiny seed. But I think I mentioned tug of war for this one because after being compressed like this, just stretch out and imagine someone who's in a tug of war. Just it feels really, really good following that stretch. And then we come up to a seat and of course, remove our strap if we haven't already. So let's see what our next one is. So that was sleeping bug. And again, you can call it anything you like. This next one is a personal favorite of mine. It's reclined supported bound angle. So we're getting a nice opening for the hips, or a stretch, a nice opening. I just said I don't like that, but you can see the hips really are opening here. So we're getting a stretch in the inner groin and the inner thigh, a stretch across the abdomen, low back and hip release. And then when we use this little lift here under the back, we're gently stretching the chest as well and supporting and opening up the shoulders to counter any slumped shoulders. And in this, I'm not going to demonstrate this today, but you can see I've made it super supportive by even placing some rolled towels under his arms as well. So for this one, I'd recommend rock and roll and windshield wiper or whale tail, which we just did for the previous pose. So I'm not going to demonstrate that for this particular one, but it's the same style warm up. Because the belly is so exposed here and open, I definitely would recommend belly breathing or even 3-part breathing where you're aware of the belly, the chest, and the upper chest filling with the inhale and softening with the exhale. And then counter stretch is tent, which I haven't demonstrated yet, so I will demonstrate that. So let's go to the other screen and we'll get set up. So you'll need a bolster. Again, if you don't have a bolster, or if the bolster is too thick, you could use folded blankets or pillows, or stacked as high as you need. Now for today, I'm actually going to make mine into a little incline. So I'm propping that up. Now in the hospital setting, I don't even use a bolster, I use the bed, and I actually will incline the bed, and then we'll do the, that will support the patient, and then we just do the lower half, so we have the support of the bed. So that's another way to access it as well. And then I'm going to need my, I just used my block when I need it for my legs. So I'm going to switch. So this just shows you don't have to use traditional blocks. I'm using a bolster, a second bolster, to create that same incline. So I still have the same incline, but I'm using a bolster to prop the bolster up. And that way I have my blocks to support my legs. So I'm beginning in butterfly. So my feet are together, my knees are out, my butt is on the floor in front of the short edge of the bolster. So I'm not sitting on the bolster at all. And now I'm coming back. So this is lovely. My chest is expanding and getting a stretch. The tops of my shoulders are. And now I'm just going to bring the blocks under my legs for additional support. And my hands can rest on the belly for some nice slow belly breaths. This is actually a personal favorite stretch of mine, and I could just take a nap here right now. It feels wonderful. But of course, I've got a lot more stretches to demonstrate, so I won't just take a snooze here. So this is the posture. My hands are resting on my belly because I just like that. It makes me feel more grounded, but as I demonstrated in the illustration, the arms could be out to the sides. You could even put little pillows or towels under the arms for additional support. Now to come out of this posture, I'm going to remove the blocks, bring my knees together, and walk my feet wide and let my knees rest on each other, so it's like a little tent or a little pyramid, and rest here for a little bit. Now remember, they don't have to be blocks. They could be folded towels, rolled towels, whatever you need. And beneath here can be a folded blanket or a towel or a pillow. And I'm just gently going to roll to one side of the bolster, and then we'll remove it upward. Okay, so let's see what our next stretch is. Now that one I call floating stingray. So you could do a little story about the stingray. You can see here the shape of the body of the stingray and then its tail and where the stingray is swimming and what it sees. And you could play some ocean sounds if you were calling it floating stingray. But again, as I always say, you're never limited to calling it just one thing. So treasure hunter, and I call this one treasure hunter because we're turning the attention inward and finding those treasures inside of us. And I like to bring kids awareness to that they have all these treasures inside of them. So this is supported easy pigeon. We're using a desk here, but today I'm going to use a chair. Again, being aware of the size of the props and the size of the person must align. So it's got to be supportive. If it's not supportive because the prop is the wrong size, then you're using the wrong prop and you need to think of an alternative. Today I'm going to use a chair, and this is the right size chair for me. Demonstrated on the in the illustration, we're using a little desk, and that's almost the right size, but you can see to make it the absolute correct size, we've got a little prop under his butt. So you can always prop up on a folded cushion or a blanket. If that's necessary. In the hospital setting, I have children sit in the bed, and I adjust those adjustable tables that slide over the bed up to the right height to access this posture. So there's always different ways to approach it and find the prop that works for the situation. And never force it. If you can't find the right prop or the right adjustments, then you need to find a different posture or stretch. So this is gently stretching the hips and the low back, and it's very calming and soothing for the mind because it's almost like a restorative forward bend where we're bringing our attention inwards. And again, focusing on that hip and low back stretch. So seated cat-cow or hip circles work for a gentle warm-up. Again, because we're moving forward, I'm thinking a nice, bringing the attention to the back side of the body, to really be aware of the back expanding on the inhales and softening on the exhales to encourage deeper, fuller breaths. And then the counter stretch, because the legs are crossed for a long period, nice licorice legs, which I'll show you what those are if you have not seen the previous webinars where I talk about licorice legs. So prop size is important. Prop stability is equally important. I'm going to bring the chair, if you're ever using a chair or a table as a prop, you must be on a non-slip surface. So I've got this on the carpet and the yoga mat, so it can't move, can't slide. So we're beginning in easy pose, which is one ankle in front of the other. We would do our seated cat-cows. So I'm just going to do 2 quick rounds. Breathing in for the cow, breathing out for the cat. You could do a few more rounds of them back, but I want to get on to show the actual postures when we've already demonstrated the warm-ups or the warm-ups that you would be familiar with from previous webinars. And we're doing some hip circles, making sure the hips stay glued down as we go in both directions. And I'm just going to switch again and again. So you notice that I have the chair in front of me. I've got a small folded towel, and that's just to create a little bit of height from my forehead. That's optional. If you might need more, you could stack some towels or even a bolster on the chair if you needed more height. But just a folded towel is enough for me. So my right ankle is in front of my left. I'm going to take a breath in, find length, and as I exhale, fold forward, stacking my palms, resting my forehead on the palms. Now, my right foot is in front. I feel this across my lower back, and I feel it in both hips, but I feel it a little bit more in the right hip. So whichever foot is in front, you're going to feel the stretch slightly more in the hip that correlates with that foot. So for that reason, after holding this for however long you're going to hold it, come out and switch the cross of the feet. So we're balanced, and now I'm going to feel the stretch more in the left hip than I did the right. And I'm going to come forward on the exhale and balance myself out by holding the pose for an equal amount of time on this side, knowing that's going to feel quite different on each side. And that's okay. Being aware when you're using props as well, and you're doing the same stretch on both sides of the body, you may need to prop differently on each side, just because we are typically asymmetrical and we tend to favor one side more than the other as well. So we want to be able to be prepared for that and not just assume that we need the exact same props and the exact same support when we're doing the alternate or the opposite side of a posture or a stretch. So that's just something else to be aware of. Oh, and licorice legs. I didn't demonstrate licorice legs. So we come out of that one, extend the legs long and just give them a little shake, like little ropes of licorice. Yeah, and let's take a look at the next one. Oops, my apologies. So king or queen on a throne. I love this one. It's a great pose. It's very supportive of postural health and postural alignment. The way the prop is positioned under the hips and pelvis just really supports it and helps the body find a naturally upright position that's comfortable. And this is really comfortable when you're to hold when you're learning breathing techniques or meditation techniques and stillness and working on postural alignment at the same time. It actually stretches the knees, hips, and ankles, you can see here. And this is what I love about yoga-based stretching, whether it's this restorative style or regular movement. We target so many parts of the body with just one simple stretch sometimes, and parts of the body that we don't always typically think about. But the whole body is important, and that's why I love this style of stretching and movement. It aligns the spine and torso to support good posture. So stretching cat is what I would use to warm up because it includes the legs, and I'm going to demonstrate that. Mindfulness, definitely introducing elevated breath here, because I want children to be aware of how straight they are in this pose and how good that feels. And the counter stretch, table, shin stomps, and sprouting seed. What are those? All will be revealed. So let's get set up for king or queen on the throne. Just going to move my props out of the way, coming into table. So just a regular table. I'm going to stretch one foot back. So this is my stretching cat, and I stretch, come rock up on with the ball of my foot, and then stretch it back. And we'll do that 3 times. Come back to table, and I'm going to do it the other way. So stretching cat, stretching cat, stretching cat. Then coming to my knees. Today I'm going to use a bolster. You could use a block. You could use a pillow. You could use a folded blanket. But today I am going to use a bolster. So coming up on my knees, I'm taking my knees wide but still aligned. So my ankles are aligned with my knees. My knees are just slightly wider than my hips here. Just to create space to bring the bolster. So the bolster is sliding under my hips, and then I'm going to hug the bolster so that my shins on both sides and calves align with the bolster. Then I'm lowering my hips onto the bolster. So I come a little bit far forward, just finding the right point where I can sit and my pelvis is secure. And you see how straight I am automatically. Just holding me here. It really supports good posture. So I feel regal and royal, like a king or queen on his or her throne. And this is it. So you could guide elevated breath here as we work on the posture. We could have a quiet conversation about our king or queen and their kingdom and what it's like and what the people they rule are like, or the animals if it's a fantasy kingdom. Only limited by your imagination and the child's imagination that you're working with. So when I'm ready to come out of this posture, come up on the knees, remove the bolster, come back into table, and we do some shin stomps. And that will just get the blood flowing back in the legs after sitting on the knees. Get the blood flowing again with our shin stomps, and then come into a sprouting seed. Just reaching your arms forward. And we'll move on to our next one. Now, as I'm going through these, I'm demonstrating the pose, talking about props, talking about breathing techniques and counter stretches and warm-ups. You would actually hold these postures for a length of time to really experience the benefits. So I do recommend, if you're following along with me now and just getting the feel of them, after watching this webinar, to go back and really explore these postures, play around with propping yourself in different props to really experience true support, and hold each one for 5 to 10 minutes and notice the benefits. That you experience it firsthand, it just makes it so much easier for you to teach and lead other people in these practices. So let's talk about twists. The benefits of twists are to support the rotation, mobility, and flexibility of the spine and the hips. They can relieve physical tension in the low back and hip areas. Twists also help to tone core muscles, gently stimulate the internal organs, and support healthy digestion. You must be mindful to twist so you're compressing and moving in the direction that the digestive system works. So the digestive system functions. We have our ascending colon, transverse colon, descending colon. And actually, I should reverse that, because you've been on your right side is your ascending, and then across the middle is your transverse. On your left side is your descending. Okay. So wellness support, mobility and flexibility of the spine. You want a healthy spine. It's going to carry you through life. Hip and low back pain relief. Can also provide relief for constipation and gas, and support healthy digestion. So they're the wellness benefits of twists. We're going to begin with snoozing whale, which is a reclined knee down twist. So we have the legs in a position that are similar to the tail of a whale. You can see in this demonstration, I actually have her also moving her head to the side. This is optional. So this is actually taking the twist not only through the low hips and lower bodies, torso, spine, but also into the cervical spine as well. So we've got our hips, our lumbar spine coming into a little bit of the thoracic, and then taking it into the cervical spine. That's optional. You can just focus on the gentle low back and hip stretch, and you'll be perfectly fine. Warm up would be whale tail or windshield wiper. Because I've called this snoozing whale, I like to think of flowing water or ocean breath or something water themed for the breathing technique. And then the counter stretch is tiny seed. So we'll get set up and I will demonstrate this one. I'm not going to do the whale tail because you know what that is. You've seen it several times. I'm going to use a blanket for my support today. If the hips were super tight and only came so this far, you could use stacked bolsters, folded blankets, rolled up pillows. As long as once the legs get to wherever they can go, the person's not just trying to hold them here. We're fully supported so that they can let go. And that can help release these tight muscles, and eventually they may go deeper into the twist or rotation. So on the back, if you're not moving the head, meaning if you're not doing the twist in the cervical spine, you could use a small pillow or a rolled up towel under the neck for support. So I'll do that first. Hands can be out the sides or resting on the belly. Breath in, and on the breath out, I'm going to lower both knees to one side. Now, again, I may need to stack more under here if my legs didn't make it all the way to the floor, which they do. Now, both of my knees are touching and my legs stacked. In some cases, we may have tight hips and there may be a gap here. There may be a huge gap here. So then we would place something between the legs to close them, just to provide that extra support so that we can help let go of this. And the person's, even subconsciously, the person may be holding onto their leg if it's like this. So you really want to provide that support and something that they can feel and relax into. And then they can start to let go here where the tightness is. And then if you wanted to take this into the cervical spine, you would do it with a breath, easy breath in, and on the exhale, you want to turn the head in the opposite direction to the knees. And then of course, you would do the other side as well. And the counter stretch, tiny seat, and we would come up to a seat. Let's see what's next. So TikTok clock, this is why I have my particular setup today. And I do apologize for the lighting. My office just isn't designed to film in this end of my office, but I wanted to use the wall. So TikTok clock is legs up the wall with a twist. It gently stretches both sides of the torso and the legs. So it stretches the calves and the hamstrings, and it releases and stretches the low back and the hips, as well as the torso. Again, turning of the head is optional. The head can just be supported and looking straight up. So the warm-up would be wall slides, which I'm going to demonstrate. Because I've called it TikTok clock, because the shape reminds me of the arms of an analog clock. So counting breath, of course, fits the theme. And the counter stretch would do legs up the wall and tiny seats. So I'm going to demonstrate all of those. I will point out, if you are using a wall as a prop, you want a clean wall. And when I say clean, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to go whitewash your walls. But what you want is no artwork, no bookshelves, no windowsills. So for today, I'm only going to do this in one direction. But typically, you'd want it clear so you can move the legs in both directions. So it's just for the demonstration, but typically you would not do it how I'm going to do it, where you had a window here, because it just wouldn't work. You need completely clean wall space for the entire area that you'll be moving the body in. So I need a bolster. Again, that doesn't have to be a bolster. Depends on mobility and flexibility. You might need a whole stack of supports here. You may remove the supports completely and just use the strap. So whenever we're doing something at the wall, you come as close to the wall as you can. So we're sitting perpendicular to the wall, and then we're going to swing around onto the back and reach the legs up the wall. Now I'm quite far away from the wall here, so walk my bum until it's close up to the wall. So this is legs up the wall. This is a wonderful restorative posture. I'm going to bring my feet to the wall, so my knees bend, and I'm doing some little wall slides, taking the legs up and down the wall. And that's my warm-up. So the next time I come down, I'm going to hook my strap around my feet and extend my legs up straight. So I'm holding the strap. I'm taking my arm out to the side, flat on the floor, taking a breath in. My feet are flexed, and as I breathe out, I'm gently lowering my legs, keeping them straight, down to the bolster. I'm getting that nice rotation in my torso, and I'm going to turn my head today. Now you'll notice with the strap, I have it pulled taut and my elbow resting on the floor. So my elbow is acting like a brake. Instead of having tension in my shoulder and arm trying to hold on like this, I've got the elbow there. So I've got it at the right point that the strap can be taut and my elbow just comfortably resting on the floor. So to come out, I'm going to bend the knees, bring my feet back up the wall, straighten them. I can let go of the strap and just come into legs up the wall. And then bringing my feet, taking the strap away, sliding my feet down, tiny seat at the wall. Reaching one arm up, coming into a side child's pose. You could rest there before pressing up and coming out of the posture. So that one again, like the others, you would do both sides. Being aware, when you do the other side of the body, sometimes the props that you need will be different. And just being aware of that and having alternative props ready to help support the child or individual you're working with. and being observant as well. They may not speak up, they may not feel it, they may not be aware, but you can see how they're holding their body, whether they need more props or less props or some alternative prop to support them fully in the stretch. Okay, sleeping caterpillar. This is a personal favorite of mine. So it's a child's pose with a twist. So it's like a revolved child's pose. So we're going to use, I'm just going to use one bolster today. For this one, you could use a pillow. You could have a couple stacked. You may need to prop up and make a little ramp, and that's fine too. So I'm going to begin on my left side. So I'm coming perpendicular to the short edge of the mat, and then I'm bringing my feet out to the side and I'm sitting side saddle. So this is my left thigh, and I've got the short edge of the bolster aligned with my left thigh, the top of my left thigh. I'm bringing my right hand in front of my left knee and my left hand by my left hip, and I'm going to breathe in and sit up nice and tall here. Actually, before I go into this demonstration, I apologize. I'm jumping ahead of myself. So, sleeping caterpillar is what I've called this one, because this just feels like a little cocoon, and I think of this spun cocoon as we make this rotating shape before we become a butterfly. So grounding and supported, we're just snuggled into this bolster. It's grounding and supported. We're getting a gentle stretch for the back and the torso and a gentle rotation of the back and the torso. It stimulates and supports healthy digestion, but we're also slowing everything down as we do this. I would do seated cat-cow and hip circles, similar to what we did when we did the treasure hunter stretch. Back breathing is a nice one for this particular stretch. Not quite elevator breathing, but something where you're imagining the spine lengthening as we're twisting, even when we're holding, to think of that spine to continue lengthening as you rotate is just supporting the spine health, and it prevents any crunching and just helps to send the message to the individual practicing that we always want to be lengthening the spine as much as possible, especially as we're rotating. And then for a counter stretch, sprouting tiny seed. So let's begin. I'm going to flip so you can see me clearly, and then I will show you this setup again. So we have the bolster, and I'm going to begin just by kneeling next to it. So the short edge of the bolster is here. I'm going to take my feet out to the side and sit down on the floor. So both my heels are outside my right hip here. I've got one hand in front of my knee and one by my hip on either side of the bolster. I'm going to lengthen and gently rotate my torso so it's square with the bolster. Inhale, and on the exhale, I'm walking forward and I'm resting my ear on the bolster. So this is the first stage. So my face is facing the same way as my knees. And so it's a little bit of a rotation in the lumbar spine and the hips. I want to increase that rotation. Now I'm coming a little bit into my thoracic. I can rest my forehead on the bolster. If I want to really increase that rotation, I can take my ear to the bolster and face the opposite direction. So they're the three stages. 1, 2, and 3. Then to come out of it, slowly walking back up and moving step by step out of the posture. And then of course you would do the opposite direction, either moving the bolster to this side and doing the right leg, or just turning around and beginning this way. As long as you do both sides, it doesn't matter how you do it. And be mindful when you do the other side of the stages, and starting at the first stage, second, third, and finding the stage that's correct for the person who's practicing. And it's just like Goldilocks and the 3 bears. You can taste each one of the porridges. You don't have to stick with them. If they don't work for you, you can always go back to the porridge that works for you, or the stage of the posture or stretch that works for you. You're never committed unless you're fully comfortable and supported, then you should be committed. Okay, so lastly, snake in a cave. This is a favorite of mine. I love it because it's a great shoulder stretch. It also stretches the arms, the neck, and the upper back. It's a gentle twist for the spine and the abdominal region. It is called traditionally thread needle pose, but I like it because the arm is like a snake coming through this little cave we make here. For a warm-up, I'm recommending table to cat-cow to hip circles to arm circles. Bear breath is a mindfulness technique because snakes hibernate just like bears. So I was thinking of animals that hibernate when I came up with calling the snake in the cave. So I would introduce bear breath, which is a hibernation style breathing technique. And then to counter stretch, some more cat-cow and sprouting seeds. So let's get set up and I'll demonstrate this posture. Move the bolster out of the way. And for this one, I'm going to demonstrate without a prop, but I'm also having a small prop, like a folded towel or a small pillow, to show you as well. So we're starting table and some cat-cows, some hip circles. And you see how I'm taking these hip circles, not just thinking about the hips, but into the shoulders, almost into barrel rolls, these can be called, or dancing lion, going in both directions and really bringing it into the shoulders as much as the hips, this rotation and movement. And then some arm circles. And I'm just doing the arm I'm going to demonstrate on for now. So finding table again. On an in-breath or an inhale, I'm going to reach my right arm up. And on the exhale, here comes my snake into the cave. And I'm reaching it through until my shoulder rests on the floor, and then I'm resting my ear on the floor as well. Now, in the illustration, the arm is up like this. So this is way too active for restorative stretching. So we can take the arm up and then just rest it behind the back, or you can keep the hand on the floor where we originally had it. For today, I'm going to reach my hand here. So this is snake in a cave. And the child just close their eyes and rest. And I'm getting a really lovely stretch in my shoulders. And this is a nice one for that portion of the spine between your shoulder blades, the thoracic spine, as well as the cervical spine. Now, why do I have the props here? Sometimes there is a gap between the head making contact, the shoulder making contact. So with the floor or the mat, so having a little pillow and a rolled up blanket or a towel under the shoulder. So I'm going to take that stretch, reaching through. So I'm resting my shoulder on the towel and my head on the pillow. Now this is where it's really important to communicate and observe. This is where you would see the position of the neck and the shoulder, and would be able to support the neck and shoulder with a towel and pillow as needed. Just being aware that, I'm going to show you again, we're maintaining alignment of the cervical spine and the neck. So if I was up here, you don't want to prop my neck like this. You want to keep everything in line and then support it correctly and safely. This is definitely one of those stretches that you should try before you teach. And as with a lot of stretches, when you're doing it yourself, if you're doing it wrong, you're going to know. Your body will tell you because it feels awful. And if you're doing it right, it's going to feel wonderful. And that's pretty much the case. But you do want to be careful because you don't want to be putting a lot of pressure on your neck or your head. So you want to be really mindful that if you're not forcing that to make contact with the floor, if it doesn't make contact with the floor, you're supporting it with the pillow of a towel or a folded blanket or whatever you need to fully support yourself. And that as you're supporting yourself, you're not changing your alignment and really bending your neck out of shape, that you're maintaining that cervical alignment and the head is square on the head. You're not pushing it really, really far in either direction. So that's something you want to be mindful of. And if you can't safely lead that posture or feel it in yourself, then don't teach it at all. don't teach a restorative version of that, you can get a very similar stretch just doing a seated variation such as this. So that's one that you really have to be mindful of, that you're not putting the weight in the neck, the head, or straining it or misaligning it in any way. So that, I believe, brings us to the end of our twists. And up next will be the final part of the restorative section of this series. We'll be going into session 27, and we'll be exploring restorative stretches for children that fall under the categories of inversions and also the big relax. So that's relaxation posture, and they've got different ways to prop and support the body in that to really help the body let go after doing some yummy restorative stretches, and then really settle in for what is called the big relax, or full deep relaxation. I hope you can join me, and I look forward to connecting with you very, very soon.